The following is a review for critical, analytical, and educational purposes only, and is protected under Article 17 and 107 in the United States Fair Use Code. This video is not an infringement on copyright. Please enjoy the video.
Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Trilbee and welcome to my 2014 holiday special. Now, I was tempted to review a Christmas movie for this time of year, but then I thought, nah, that's what they'd expect you to do. Now, in all honesty, I thought to myself I would probably not reach a December 25th self-imposed deadline, so I can't really review a Christmas movie in case I miss that. So I thought, okay, what other films or programming do people like to watch around the holidays? And for some reason my mind went to one franchise, Wallace and Gromit.
Yeah, come to think of it, these movies have some association with the holidays. The iconic short films are frequently shown on TV around Christmas, with the fourth one actually making its premiere on TV on Christmas Day 2008. This British franchise has become an institution, and I grew up loving these movies, so I thought, you know what, this year, I'll review one of them.
And where better to start than at the beginning? Let's talk about A Grand Day Out. Now, reviewing this is strange for me personally, because years and years ago when I was doing GCSE English, we had to do a written movie review. We were given 4 or 5 movies and we had to choose one, and we had to do a review of it for our assignment, and I chose A Grand Day Out. It was the very first review that I ever wrote, and I got an A star for it. So that's technically where my reviewing days began, so it's fun to revisit this. But before we talk about the movie itself, let's talk about its history, because I think it's fascinating.
The creation of Wallace and Gromit started in the early 1980s and was conceived by Nick Park, a film student studying at the National Film and Television School. The idea for A Grand Day Out was planned out in sketchbooks, which eventually grew to become short animated tests for the characters. As you can see from these early concepts, Wallace very quickly grew into the character we know and love today after losing his moustache, of course, but Gromit looked incredibly different. In fact, before these sketches, Gromit, who got his name because Nick Park's brother, who was an electrician, often said the word Gromit, which is something to do with wiring, I believe, and Nick liked the sound of it. He was originally meant to be a cat. He then became a talking dog that was meant to be voiced by Peter Hawkins, who voiced the Daleks in Peter Cushing's TV movies from the 1960s. It wasn't until Nick Park realised how they could make Gromit emote with just his facial expressions that he lost his voice. The movie first started while Nick Park was still a film student, however after 2 years he'd only managed to create around 10 of the 23-minute movie. Keep in mind that he was working on his own, animating every frame by hand and creating every prop himself, and stop motion animation is an incredibly time-consuming process. In fact, according to the commentary track found on the Complete Collection DVD, the rocket building sequence alone, which took up only a paragraph of text on the script, took around 18 months to animate.
However, it was during the animation process that Nick Park caught the attention of Aardman Animations. They saw his work in progress, liked what they saw, and they offered him a job. And not only that, but they would offer him the resources to finish A Grand Day Out in his spare time while he worked on other projects for them.
These projects included Morph, Second Class Mail and Babylon during the mid-80s, as well as the famous music video for Peter Gabriel's song Sledgehammer, in which Nick is often credited with animating the dancing chickens. Ultimately, after 6 years of work and with the help of many of Nick Park's friends whom he met at school and staff members at Aardman, A Grand Day Out was completed.
So when you really think about it, what we have here is one of the most iconic and well-regarded student films in recent memory. Now, with that out of the way, let's talk about A Grand Day Out.
A Grand Day Out was broadcast on Christmas Eve 1990 in the UK. It was broadcast on Channel 4 and was produced by Aardman Studios in association with the National Film and Television School. It was directed, written and animated by Nick Park, produced by Rob Copeland, who also edited the movie, with music by Julian Knott and starring Peter Sallis. It has a running time of 23 minutes, with a U certificate with an unknown production budget. The movie won the Best Animated Film category at the British Academy Film Awards in 1990 and was nominated for Best Animated Short at the 63rd Academy Awards.
So after all of these years getting rid of all nostalgia, does A Grand Day Out hold up? Let's find out.
A Grand Day Out opens with Wallace, voiced by Peter Sallis, and his pet dog Gromit, looking for something to do on their bank holiday. When Wallace goes to see if they have any cheese for their crackers, he is dismayed to discover that they've run out. Hoping to rectify this incredible calamity, Wallace decides to go somewhere where there is cheese.
Now, where were we? Places you find cheese: Lancashire, Cheddar, Wensleydale, Philadelphia, Tesco's. Everybody knows the moon's made of cheese.
So Wallace and Gromit build a spaceship under their house and the two go to the moon in search of cheese. Yes, that is the plot of A Grand Day Out.
One thing I find so incredibly admirable about A Grand Day Out is its just because sensibilities. Make no mistake, this movie is running on cartoon logic in a very literal sense.
Wallace goes into his basement and, with the help of his intelligent dog, just builds a spaceship out of wood which somehow works, and they go to the moon to find cheese. The sheer lack of logic there is actually admirable. Because the short film just goes with this idea, it means that the audience can accept a lot of the abstract concepts that are found later on. For example, the whole moon is made of cheese idea. Of course the moon is made from rock, yet Wallace can not only eat it, but he can easily cut through it with a butter knife. What's funny is that he actually likes it enough to take a basket full home with him. A lot of the humour can be found in stuff like that, like Wallace eating toast on his way to the moon, reading the paper and taking a photo of Gromit stacking cards.
One for the album.
This is humble, normal, everyday stuff, but when you take a step back and remember that these two are off to the moon for their bank holiday, it's just so charming and the movie wins you over. Things like the mice in the basement watching them build the ship, Gromit hammering the nails into the wood in rhythm with Wallace's soaring. He even looks away and continues to do it flawlessly. Wallace soaring through the support beams as he tries to soar through the wooden door. And my favourite part of that is how he keeps trying to soar. I can't explain it, it's just so delightful, it defies description. And it's not just moments like that that get a big laugh out of me. There are a few moments of honest to God slapstick that have me in stitches.
I think, I could be wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, that is the only time in this entire franchise so far that Gromit has made a noise.
Then there's the scene where Wallace forgets the crackers and he has to race to get them. Something so small, but it feels like a huge deal to him, so it actually feels important and tense with the music, the countdown timer and the shortening fuse. This is a world where all that exists in Wallace's fridge is a plate that's meant to hold cheese. A world where the moon is actually made of something edible that can pass as cheese. A world where the spaceship is held in place from launching because of a simple handbrake. A world where a man and his dog can have a picnic on the moon in their normal attire. A world where these are Wallace's actual blueprints. A world where the moon seems to have normal gravity, but this can still happen. This movie is a cartoon through and through, and it relishes that. The unrestrained sensibilities of A Grand Day Out are admirable and utterly charming.
Just because this movie is running on cartoon logic doesn't mean that it doesn't have an eye for detail. Let's talk about the production.
Naturally, with low-budget plasticine, some parts don't hold up particularly well, some notable examples being Wallace's arms and some of his mouth movements, but there are some great moments of animation here. I love the speed of some of the movements, like when Wallace goes to get the crackers before the ship launches. In fact, now is probably the best time to talk about Peter Sallis' voice. Nick Park had Sallis in mind for the part after watching his work in Hammer horror films, as well as the very successful Last of the Summer Wine, where Sallis played Norman Clegg.
She was going to take me for a haircut. Can you imagine? At my age, the unisex hair boutique. I'm not even sure that I've got unisex hair.
Nick contacted Peter's agent and offered him £50 to voice his character for a student film, and amazingly, Peter accepted. Keep in mind that £50 in the early 1980s equates to around £160 in 2014. It's kind of hard to distance yourself from Peter Sallis's performance because he's become so recognisable for it, but I think he's great here. Sallis is able to ground the character and give him such a likeable but naive front. The way he accentuates certain words makes his voice distinct, but he doesn't go over the top. Wallace sounds like your average Yorkshireman, which makes this fantastical adventure seem even more amazing in contrast.
Hold tight, lad, and think of Lancashire hot pot.
And Wallace has a very expressive face and you can easily read his emotions. The animation standout, however, is of course Gromit. He never says a word, but you can just know what he's thinking through his eyebrows, the way he looks into the camera, his ear movements, subtle gestures. It's just an incredibly well realised personality, and he never says a word.
It's different. Camembert.
While Wallace and Gromit are the stars of A Grand Day Out, there's one more star we have yet to talk about, and that is the Cooker.
While the robot's not given a name, the Cooker is what he's called unofficially by Nick Park, so that's what I'll call it here. The Cooker is a 3-wheeled robot that lives on the moon and is coin-operated.
Okay.
And it has a TV antenna on top of it with a drawer that contains a telescope, knife, glue and other various items.
Okay.
I have no idea how something like this could be conceived or know why there's a coin-operated robot on the moon that runs on English currency, but you know what? It's a cartoon. I'm big enough to take it. Anyway, the Cooker helps to break up the pace of the movie. As charming and entertaining as it is to watch Wallace and Gromit have a picnic on the moon, the short would need something a little bit more, and the Cook adds a threat for our heroes to evade. I like how Wallace is oblivious to the threat and how he unwittingly makes things worse by giving it more money.
Oh.
What I always found strange was that when he put the money in the first time and nothing happened, Wallace called it daylight robbery, but when it comes back and he's none the wiser to what he's doing, he puts more money in the machine. I don't know, maybe he thinks that he won that bet or something. Anyway, while the Cooker has no dialogue, it can be safely assumed that it's there to look after the moon as it tries to glue it back together after Wallace cuts a stalagmite for the cheese. It attaches a fine to the spaceship and how it tries to stop Wallace with the bats later on. Yep, this highly sophisticated robot has a bat.
Oh, that's not me complaining, by the way. I think that's awesome.
But the Cooker actually has quite an interesting arc in this story, where it finds one of Wallace's holiday magazines and starts dreaming of going skiing. And as much as I love A Grand Day Out, I actually think it's the finale with the Cooker where it lets the side down a bit. Don't get me wrong, it's a way to get Wallace and Gromit off the moon in a hurry. The music is great as it instills a sense of dread and urgency, but the Cooker's motivation doesn't really make any sense. When I was a kid, I just assumed that after seeing the ship and the Earth in its telescope, that it just wanted to stop the two from leaving so it could beat it to death with its baseball bat and steal Wallace's wallet so that it could live forever on pocket change.
What, just me?
But what's interesting is that when the Cooker looks at the Earth in the telescope, it goes back to its skiing fantasy. So can we assume that what Wallace misinterprets as a wild attack on the two is actually a plea from the Cooker to take it with them so it can go to Earth and ski? Now that's actually a really nice subversion and twist, but what actually happens is that the cooker cuts its way into the mechanisms of the ship, finds the matches, lights one up, and holds it next to the fuel container, which suggests malicious intent. It would make sense if Cooker was there to light the fuse to the rocket, since Wallace and Gromit forgot. In fact, if the cooker didn't ignite the fuel, the two wouldn't have been able to launch, and then the launch blasts Cooker away from the rocket, but not before he takes some scraps of metal with him. Now I think what would have worked is if Wallace and Gromit tried to escape from Cooker, who just wanted to come with them to Earth, and Cooker tries to stow away inside of the ship after cutting through it since he can't climb the ladder, but realises the fuse isn't lit. He lights the fuse but gets blown away from the ship as it launches. That's what I would do, because as it is now, it's really confusing as to what Cooker wants or what its intentions were, because the two interpretations are contradicted by each other.
Now, I'm not trying to be negative about A Grand Day Out. This is a very well-regarded classic, and people will tear me apart if I give it a negative review. But you see where I'm coming from, right? I mean, he has that skiing fantasy before he chases the two down, so that suggests that he just wants to fulfill his dream. But then he cuts his way into the ship, and then he holds the match up to the fuel container, which suggests malicious intent. Now, I'm not missing something here, am I?
But thankfully, A Grand Day Out makes up for that by having a really sweet ending. Upset that he was either left behind or he couldn't stop the two, take your pick, he realises in his anger that the two pieces of metal he took with him from the spaceship can be used as makeshift skis, and he finally fulfills his dream by skiing on the moon as Wallace and Gromit watch from the spaceship on their journey home. Where did the cooker get the ski poles from? Who cares? It's a cartoony happy ending and it never fails to make me smile, even if it got there a bit clunkily.
But the story and characters can be enjoyed by anybody of any age. I loved A Grand Day Out as a kid, and I still love it now.
However, what stood out to me the most revisiting this are the props and the locations. Sure, there are a few obvious standouts, such as these holiday magazines and cheese holidays? Okay, that's funny. I don't know why, but that is funny. But just look at the tray that Wallace puts his teapot and plate on at the beginning. It has coffee ring stains on it. Now that's a tiny, insignificant observation, but Nick Park didn't need to add that detail, but he did anyway, and that's commendable. Also, when the camera pans down to the basement for the first time, there's a sledge in the background with the name Rosebud on it. Nice touch. And what about the duck matches, a funny parody of swan matches? These tiny details concerning the props and scenery are ideals that would become a staple of Aardman movies in the future. I also love the operating desk inside the spaceship and the flickering lights. I can't even begin to think about how something like that would be achieved in stop motion. But as for the locations, some of them are pretty gorgeous. I mean, just look at Wallace's basement and how huge that staircase is. Think about the logistics of that in terms of being underneath his house. Wallace must be loaded. The flora wallpaper inside the spaceship, the photos and pictures around the house, and just look at the backgrounds on display in this film. It's a small view, but I love the art style of the outside world that we see through the window of Wallace and Gromit's living room. The drawn style really helps to complement the 3D plasticine space, and the backdrop of the moon is gorgeous. According to Nick Park, the set for the moon was only around 3 feet deep, but the clever use of shading and perspective makes it look like it goes on forever. Not to mention the blurry backgrounds when the characters are in focus helps make the background look more real to them. And then there's the use of perspective when we have the shot of the garden opening up to reveal the moon in the sky, all done with on-set camera trickery. There's one detail that I really like where the flames on the lit matches are actually just bits of paper or card attached to the match. And I love the music in A Grand Day Out as well. The score was done by Julian Knott, who was another student at the National Film and Television School with Nick Park, and each tune is memorable. The rocket building theme, the moon theme, the danger theme, and of course the iconic theme we all know so well. The music adds such a grand scale to these events, and despite it just being a bank holiday for Wallace and Gromit, not music makes it feel like a blockbuster. Wallace's race to get the crackers during the countdown feels important, and a big reason for that is the music, which gets faster and the tone gets higher as the countdown progresses, and the rocket launch feels epic because of the loud horns, and the climax feels full of peril because of the music as Cooker chases the pair, and a big part of the audience feeling sympathy for Cooker once he's failed his vaguely defined mission objective is because of the music.
So, after all of that, here's my conclusion.
A Grand Day Out is a charming, irresistible gem of an animated short. Its animation may be rough around the edges of points, and the ending motivations of the antagonist are too vaguely defined, but everything else is simply terrific. The simplicity is a strength for the story, with the humble production design contrasting with the outlandish cartoony sensibilities and premise, along with the terrific production design and music. Combine that with Peter Sallis's endearing and likeable Wallace and the bond he has with Silent Gromit, and you've got a recipe for movie magic.
And A Grand Day Out is pretty much beloved by everybody. When I told people I was thinking of reviewing this movie, nobody had a bad word to say about it. This is a universally beloved movie. With that being said, why did it not win Best Animated Short at the Oscars?
At the 63rd Academy Awards, there were 3 nominees for Best Animated Short. The first was A Grand Day Out by Nick Park. The second was a 9-minute cartoon from Italy named Cavalette, which for the record is a nice little short. It basically condenses most of civilized history into 9 minutes, and it's a nice short. There's nothing particularly exceptional about it other than its great music score, which seamlessly transitions between the time periods, but it's good. And the third nominee was Creature Comforts, also from Aardman Animations, a stop-motion film that is based around interviews with normal British people, but the video had been replaced with animals at the zoo.
But what's most interesting about Creature Comforts, at least in terms of this narrative, is that Creature Comforts was made by Nick Park. For his first ever Oscar nomination, he was facing himself.
Creature Comforts ultimately took home the Oscar, and I can see why. It's a brilliant concept and it requires immense creativity. Like I said, the team at Aardman interviewed normal British people and turned this.
My room is a bit too small really, and I've got so much stuff in it that if I get anything new there's just nowhere to put it.
Into this.
My room is a bit too small really, and I've got so much stuff in it that if I get anything new there's just nowhere to put it.
That's a great concept and it's very entertaining and well realised, but upon reflection I think A Grand Day Out is the stronger film, and it's easily become the most favourable and memorable through the test of time. However, Wallace and Gromit would get their chance at Oscar glory, as they'd star in more award-winning short films, a feature-length movie, video games, one of which were made by Telltale Games, the creators of the Walking Dead game series, merchandise, books, comics, spin-off shorts, spin-off TV shows, spin-off movies. They've appeared in music videos, adverts, they featured at the BBC Proms in 2012 and more. Wallace and Gromit have been translated into over 20 languages worldwide, and with their biggest foreign success being in Japan.
グロミット、それだよそれ、チーズだ。クラッカーがないぞグロミット、クラッカーを忘れてしまった。
Heck, they've even featured on Wensleydale cheese, Wallace's favourite, and you know what, it's actually a great cheese, it tastes great. Funny story, the Wensleydale cheese factory in Yorkshire was undergoing financial difficulties around the time A Grand Day Out was released, but because of the references to it in the film, interest perked up and the company was saved, as well as a lot of jobs. And it all started right here, A Grand Day Out, a project that ultimately started out as a student film in the mind of Nick Park, a nearly decade-long endeavour created from the memories of Nick Park's family and friends based off experiences in his everyday life. The name Wallace, inspired by a fat dog Nick saw on a bus one day. Why does he love Wensleydale? Because Nick Park thought it was a fun word to say. Why is there a cooker on the moon? Because why the hell not? And he wants to ski, so what? He just wants to. And in the end he just goes out there and does it. He skis. At least until that 10p that Wallace gave him runs out.
And if I'm being completely honest and personal here, the origins of Wallace and Gromit are downright inspirational. Think about it, Nick Park as a film student made these characters in the 1980s, and they're now an institution today. But anyway, that's all from me. What do you guys and girls think of Wallace and Gromit's origins in A Grand Day Out? Be sure to leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think of the movie, if you dislike it or like it or whatever. Be sure to hit that like button because it really helps me out. Be sure to subscribe for more movie-related content. Who knows, I may review more Wallace and Gromit films one day, so be sure to be subscribed so you can keep updated on that. Visit my website, www.trilbee.com, for all of my written reviews, editorials and analysis and things like that. And also you can financially support these videos through patreon.com. There's links in the description below. If you pledge by the end of December, that's December 31st, you got to pledge by then, you get my script for this review, you get a audio commentary of A Grand Day Out that I recorded myself, and also you'll get vlog requests, you can get the chance to cameo in my videos, so please do that if you want to keep me fed and alive and keep the lights on here at Trilbee Reviews, really. And also, just have a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and I shall see you guys next time.